Alright, so in this chapter of the project we're going to be building is a very simple customer manager application. Excuse me. And it's going to be, we're going to implement the IndexedDB API, which is basically a database that will reside on the client side, so on your browser. Kind of like local storage and session storage, except with local storage, it's not made to hold large amounts of data, and basically it's just a key value pair where basically you can only store strings. With IndexedDB you can store any kind of data you want, arrays, objects, whatever, primitive data types, and it's made to hold more information, more data. Alright, and it's a really good alternative to the Web SQL storage API that is used with HTML5. And there's a big difference because web storage is actually SQL. It's a relational database where you use SQL, whereas IndexedDB is basically an object store. So it's actually much more flexible. You don't use SQL, we use transactions, asynchronous transactions. And it's just a really it's a really good system. It was created by Mozilla Developer Network, and if you go to this link here, developer.mozilla.org, and then you want to go to this file path, and there's some really good documentation. This is basically the main page that tells you what it is, gives you the key concepts and usage. It can be synchronous or asynchronous. Alright, so we're going to be using the asynchronous API. There's no storage limits. It gives you all the different methods you can use to connect to a database and manage your indexes and your fields and all that. Alright, so let's take a look at the application, which is a very simple customer manager application. Basically it's just a system to hold your customers' names and email addresses. It could even be used as kind of like a newsletter system. Basically we just have a list of customers, and of course this is going to be client side. IndexedDB is going to be all in your browser, and we have this set up on my local host. Alright, so we're using XAMPP, which gives us an Apache server, and basically we'll have a list of customers. If you want to add a new one, you can click on Add Customer, and then I have this Clear Customers link, which will destroy all customers. Okay, so basically delete everything, and that's more of a debugging development type of thing. You probably wouldn't want to keep this on your production app. But let's go ahead and add a customer, make sure it's working. Okay, so we'll say Bob Smith. Now if I just say Bob here, we're using HTML5 input fields, and this is an email field, so it should do validation for us automatically without JavaScript. So you can see if I click Add Customer, it's going to tell us it's not a valid email address. Okay, let's put an email in there. Okay, Add Customer, and it goes to the list page or the home page, and it gives us the name and email, but we're also using an ID which is set to auto increment. So basically we're telling IndexedDB to give us a primary key generated with each customer, and the only reason this is 2 and not 1 is because I've already created one and deleted one. Alright, so it just kind of picks up where it leaves off. But if you know what auto increment is, then you already know that. Alright, so we have our guy. Okay, we listed a customer. Now if we want to change it, I'm using the HTML5 content editable attribute, which allows us to click on it and change it. So let's change Bob Smith to Bob Thompson. Okay, we type it in. Let's click somewhere else. Changes. Now you can do that purely with HTML5, but if you don't add JavaScript or whatever you're using, when you reload, it's going to go back to what it was. Alright, so we should see it. It should stay the same when we reload, which it does. Okay, we can change the email, and if we reload, it stays. And if we want to delete it, we just click delete. All right, so that's going to be the application that we'll be building. So I'm going to build in my local host as well. So in my htdocs, if you're using XAMPP and you want to build this on your server, you want to go to your C drive, XAMPP, htdocs, and then create a folder there. You can see we have our customer manager. I'm just going to actually just change that and create a new one, new folder. And this will be the folder we build in. Alright. Now, you might recognize this this template here, and I figured I'd switch it up a little, and we're going to use the Bootstrap HTML5 framework. Alright, so basically we'll have a bunch of classes available to us where we can style the UI pretty much. And this is actually responsive. If we make it smaller, you can see that it adapts. It loses the sidebar when you get to a certain width. All right. So we're going to use Bootstrap. So you want to go to getbootstrapcom. All right. So we're going to build our file structure, and we're going to need some files from Bootstrap. Alright, but let's first create our index file. And we're also going to have an HTML document called add, which will be our form to add a customer. Alright, now let's go to the Bootstrap. We want to click on download Bootstrap. Download Bootstrap again. Alright, so I'm just going to save this. And let's open that up. Okay, so we have our CSS, fonts, and JavaScript folders. We actually don't need the fonts, so we'll just grab the CSS and JavaScript. Actually, you know what? Let's create our own files because we're not going to need everything that's in those files, in those folders, sorry. Alright, so for CSS, we want the Bootstrap minified CSS, and that should be it. Alright, and we want the JavaScript file, the minified version, and that should be all we need from this package. Now what I want to do is use one of the examples at the Bootstrap site to start. Alright, so if we go to getting started, I'm sorry, not, where is it? Oh, there we go. Okay, getting started, and we want to go to examples. And we're going to use, there's a bunch of starter templates here. We're going to grab this dashboard one. Okay, so it basically just takes us to the demo. So what I'm going to do here is just view source with Control U. And I'm going to copy everything here. And I want to paste it into my index file. Alright, so we're going to need, you can see that it has the Bootstrap minified CSS, which we already have. It's also using a dashboard.css file. So I want to get that as well. So if we click on that from within the source code, it'll give us that. So let's copy all of this. Alright, and go to CSS. And I'm not going to call the CSS file dashboard. I'm just going to call it style.css. Okay, and we just want to paste that in there. save that. Alright, so that should be all we need from the demo. Let's go back to the index page, and there's a few things we need to do here. I'm going to delete this description and this metadata. We don't need the favicon or anything like that. We'll leave the viewport because we want this to be responsive. Title, let's change the title. Now the CSS, the path is totally wrong. We don't want these dots. We don't want this dist folder. It's just right in the CSS folder. Alright, and then here, this dashboard, we're going to change this. It's going to be in the CSS folder and called style.css. Alright, I'm going to get rid of all this stuff. Debugging purposes, we don't need that. Alright, so if we go down to the bottom, we're loading jQuery from the Google CDN, which is fine. We want to change the path to the Bootstrap JavaScript file. Once again, take off this dist. Okay, and then here we're not going to be using this file, docs.min. We're going to use our own JavaScript file, which is going to be called main.js, which we should create right now. And this is the file that will basically power the application. Alright, so let's go ahead and make sure this is all saved, and let's check out what we have here. Okay, so this is what we have, and you can see we have a lot of sample data that comes with this template, so we're going to make sure we get rid of all that. Alright, so we'll go to the index page. Alright, so basically when you use one of these default Bootstrap templates, you have this div with the class of navbar, and this from here to here represents the navigation. Alright, now I like to stick with the HTML5 naming conventions, and I'm going to change this div to a nav. Okay, so I want to use the HTML5 nav tag instead of a div. Alright, now there's a few things we want to do. We don't need these links here, dashboard, settings, profile, which is all over here along with this search form. I'm going to get rid of all that for now. Okay, so it goes from this collapse, navbar collapse, down to this ending div. So I'm just going to get rid of that. Okay, so now our navbar is from here to here. I'm going to change this title here, project name. I'm going to change this to Customer Manager version 0.1. Alright, so let's try that. Okay, so very simple. Alright. Alright. So next, let's just go in order here, I guess. So now we have a class called container fluid. Now container is the div that holds everything in the middle. Okay, so it's set to a percentage because it's a fluid, it's flexible, and we have a margin on the left and right of auto, which keeps everything in the middle, no matter how big or small you stretch your browser. Okay, so in there we have basically a UL, okay, a couple ULs with the class of nav. These I also actually we'll keep it the way it is, but we only want one UL, so I'm going to get rid of these other two. Alright, so we're only going to have 3 links. Okay, and whichever one has the class of active is going to have this blue background. Okay, so for now let's just call this customers, which will be our home page, which is index.html, and then we're going to have another link called add customer, and this is going to go to add.html, and then this is going to say clear customers, and I'm going to give this link a class of danger because we want to make this red, because one click and it's going to wipe out all the customers, which you probably wouldn't have in a production app. Okay, so that's that. Dashboard, let's change this H1 to just say customers, and then this whole placeholders div we don't want. That is these four areas here. Okay, so let me just get rid of that. And if you plan on extending this application when we're done, then you may want to keep stuff like that. Alright, so I'm going to get rid of this H2. Okay, so basically we just have a heading, and then we have our table. Let's look at it so far. Alright, so we have our three links, customers, and we have our table. So basically we want to keep the headers, okay, so the T head, and then everything in the T body is going to be generated through our JavaScript. Okay, it's going to be pulled from the IndexedDB database and put in here. So I'm going to get rid of everything inside the inside the T body tag. Okay, so all the way to here. And then for the headings, obviously we want to change these. We're going to keep this number sign because that's going to be the ID column. Alright, and then we're going to have a name column and an email address column. Okay, and then actually we're going to have an empty one after that because that's going to be where the delete button goes. And we can get rid of this last one. Alright, let's check that out. Alright, so that's basically our shell. So now we want to create the add page. Okay, so let's open that up. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy everything from the index page because we want the same format. Except I'm going to change a few things. I'm going to change the title. And we'll keep the H1 tag, but we're going to change it to add customer. And we can get rid of this this div of table responsive. We can get rid of that whole block. Okay, so this is where we're going to put our form. Now, for the form syntax, we want to make sure we use the correct Bootstrap markup. So let's go back to get Bootstrap, and if we go to, I think it's CSS, forms, and basically I'm just going to take this example Okay, let me indent this a little, make it look a little cleaner. Alright, I don't want this file input or this checkbox, so I'm going to get rid of those. Okay, so I'm going to change some of this. The first field is going to be our customer name. Okay, the label, we don't need this for attribute. And then for the input, it's going to be type text. Okay, I'm going to get rid of the ID. And then this will just say enter name. Alright, so I'll copy that. Actually, I'll just copy that and replace this field. And just change this to email. The type we're going to change to email. And we'll change the placeholder. Okay, this placeholder attribute is HTML5. And then for the button, I'm just going to change this text to add customer. Alright, now for the form, in the form tag, I'm going to create a handler for when it's submitted. Okay, so we're going to say on submit. Then we're going to call the add customer function that we're going to create. Alright, so let's take a look at the form. Alright, looks good. So that's basically it. You can see it's a very simple interface, and I know that we built our own HTML5 templates in the past in the other projects, but if the design of your application isn't something that's set in stone, that you created maybe in Photoshop, or you're sure of that you really want, use Bootstrap or another framework just to get something up, just so you can get some clean HTML code and have it look nice without much work. I mean, you can pretty much find anything you want at the Bootstrap in the documentation with the actual demo code. Okay, so if you want these tables, if you want your tables to look like this, you can just grab the code. You can see that it all comes from the class that's implemented in the Bootstrap CSS file. Okay, and there's all kinds of things. There's you can use the grid system, tables, forms, buttons, and I go over this in depth in our responsive Bootstrap series from Eduonix. So if you want to check that out, you can learn even more. So our user interface is complete. In the next video, we're going to create our database. We're going to create the code to open it, and if we have enough time in that video, we'll do the functionality where we can add a customer.